8 American warships are positioned off the coast of Venezuela right now, a nuclear submarine, over 4,000 Marines, the largest US naval force in the Caribbean since the 1980s. Officially, this is about drug trafficking, but everyone knows what is really happening. The United States and Venezuela are closer to war than at any point in decades. The current crisis exploded in January 2025 when Donald Trump returned to the White House. Within weeks, his administration made it clear that removing Nicolas Maduro was now a top priority. The sanctions that had been slowly strangling Venezuela for years suddenly became a full economic blockade. First, Trump revoked all oil waivers. That meant Chevron, the last major American company still operating in Venezuela, had its license cancelled. Overnight, Venezuela lost one of its final sources of legitimate revenue. Experts estimate the country lost around $200 million per month just from the Chevron shutdown alone. But that was just the beginning. In April 2025, the US blocked a major natural gas project called the Dragon Field. This was a $35 billion deal that could have supplied natural gas to Trinidad and brought in desperately needed foreign investment. Washington pulled the licenses for Shell and BP, killing the project entirely. The message was clear. No Western company would be allowed to help Venezuela survive. Then came the move that shocked everyone. On July 25th, 2025, the US Treasury took an unprecedented step. It designated Venezuela's entire military leadership, known as the Cartel de los Soles, as a global terrorist organization. Not just individuals, the entire command structure. This had never been done before in American history. Every Venezuelan general now had their assets frozen. Any bank that did business with them could be sanctioned. Any country that cooperated with Venezuela's military could face consequences. It was economic warfare, taken to a level never seen before, and Trump doubled the bounty on Maduro himself to $50 million. The previous bounty was $25 million. Doubling it was a signal. Washington wanted Maduro gone, and it was willing to pay for it. But the real escalation came in August. That is when the warships arrived. A US naval strike group moved into the southern Caribbean and has stayed there ever since. The force includes 3 Aegis destroyers, a guided missile cruiser, the amphibious assault ship USS Iwo Jima, and a nuclear submarine. The Iwo Jima is not just a ship, it is a floating invasion force. It carries 2,200 Marines, attack helicopters, and amphibious assault vehicles. Everything needed to land troops on hostile beaches and seize territory. The Aegis destroyers can wipe out air defences and launch precision strikes from hundreds of miles away. The submarine adds another layer of deterrence against any Russian or Chinese response. Pentagon officials insist this deployment is routine. They say it is part of enhanced counter-narcotics operations. But the timing, the scale, and the composition of the force tell a different story. This is not a drug interdiction mission. This is a military force capable of invading and occupying a country, and Venezuela knows it. Satellite images released by Caracas in late August showed massive defensive preparations. Venezuela has been carving out new defense corridors around its oil facilities. Coastal radar systems have been upgraded. Dozens of small attack boats are now patrolling the shoreline. Anti-aircraft positions have been reinforced. Maduro himself toured border regions in September, deploying 15,000 troops to the frontier with Colombia. He held a press conference where he displayed maps and intelligence reports. He claimed the United States had positioned 8 warships, a nuclear submarine, and over 4,000 missiles within striking distance of Venezuela. His exact numbers might be exaggerated, but the threat is real. Maduro warned that if American forces crossed into Venezuelan territory, the country would unleash a republic in arms. That means total mobilization. Not just the military, but millions of armed civilians ready to fight a guerrilla war. Maduro's government has been distributing weapons to civilian militias for years. Estimates suggest there are now over 3 million militia members in Venezuela. These are not professional soldiers. They are ordinary people with rifles who have been told to defend their country against American invasion. If war breaks out, it would not be a clean military operation. It would be ugly, chaotic, and bloody. The stakes go far beyond Venezuela itself. Russia has made it clear that it views Venezuela as a strategic partner. In May 2025, Maduro flew to Moscow and signed a 10-year military cooperation agreement with Russia. Since then, Russian military advisors have been embedded with Venezuelan forces. Spare parts for Soviet-era jets have been shipped in. Intelligence reports suggest joint weapons production is being planned. If the United States invades Venezuela, Russia will almost certainly arm and support any resistance. It would be a proxy war in America's backyard, similar to what the US has done to Russia in Ukraine. Moscow would love the opportunity to bleed American resources in a conflict close to home. China is also deeply invested in Venezuela. Beijing has extended billions in oil credit lines to keep Maduro afloat. China views Venezuela as a foothold in Latin America and a source of energy resources. At the United Nations, China has shielded Venezuela from international condemnation repeatedly. If the US acts unilaterally without UN approval, China will use it to paint America as an aggressor on the world stage. And then there is Iran. Tehran has supplied refinery technology, drones, and even small naval vessels to Venezuela. Intelligence agencies believe Iranian anti-ship missiles are now in Venezuelan hands. If fighting breaks out, American ships could face weapons supplied by Iran, giving Tehran an opportunity to strike at US forces without direct confrontation. The situation is also dividing Latin America. Brazil, the largest country in South America, has openly opposed any US military intervention. Mexico has explicitly rejected allowing US forces to use Mexican territory for operations against Venezuela. Most of the region views American military action as a return to the interventionist policies of the past, but some Caribbean nations are quietly supportive. Countries like Colombia, which is hosting millions of Venezuelan refugees, are desperate for the crisis to end. Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, and others are struggling with the spillover effects of Venezuela's collapse. They may not publicly support an invasion, but they would not necessarily oppose it either. Meanwhile, inside Venezuela, the situation is becoming more desperate. The economy continues to collapse, inflation is spiking again, food shortages are worsening, power outages are constant, the refugee exodus is accelerating. Every month, tens of thousands more Venezuelans flee the country. Maduro's grip on power is weakening, but he is not going quietly. His security forces have cracked down brutally on any opposition. Thousands of political prisoners are being held in horrific conditions. Independent media has been shut down. The judiciary is completely controlled by the government. There is no legal path to removing Maduro from power. That leaves two options. Either Maduro's own military turns on him, or external forces intervene. The Trump administration appears to be betting on the former while preparing for the latter. The hope is that economic pressure combined with military threats will cause Venezuela's generals to abandon Maduro and negotiate a transition. But that strategy is risky. Venezuela's military leadership is deeply corrupt and heavily invested in keeping Maduro in power. They control drug trafficking routes, illegal gold mining, and smuggling networks. Removing Maduro means losing those revenue streams. The generals have more reason to fight than to surrender, and if the military does not crack, the United States faces a terrible choice. Launch an invasion that could turn into a prolonged occupation of a hostile country, or back down and watch Venezuela spiral further into chaos, while Russia, China, and Iran solidify their influence. Right now, the most likely scenario is continued escalation. The naval task force will stay in place. Sanctions will tighten further. More pressure will be applied to Venezuela's military leadership, and the risk of miscalculation grows every day. A single incident could change everything. A Venezuelan patrol boat firing on an American ship, a US reconnaissance aircraft shot down, a skirmish along the Colombian border that pulls in American forces. Any of these could be the spark that turns this standoff into open war. The Trump administration insists it does not want war, but it has assembled the capability to fight one. and it has made clear that Maduro remaining in power is unacceptable. Those two positions may be incompatible. Something has to give. Venezuela is not capable of defeating the United States in a conventional war. American military superiority is overwhelming, but Venezuela does not need to win. It just needs to survive long enough to turn the conflict into a quagmire. With millions of armed civilians, foreign support from Russia and China, and mountainous terrain perfect for guerrilla warfare, Venezuela could make an occupation extremely costly. The United States learned this lesson in Iraq and Afghanistan. Winning the war is easy, winning the peace is nearly impossible, and Venezuela would be worse. It has a larger population than Iraq, it has a more hostile civilian base, and it has more external support. So the question is not whether the US can topple Maduro, it absolutely can. The question is what comes after, and whether Washington is prepared for the consequences of that decision. For now, both sides remain locked in a dangerous standoff. The warships stay offshore, the troops remain mobilised, and the world watches to see who blinks first. But with every passing week, the risk of conflict grows, and the window for a peaceful resolution shrinks. The United States and Venezuela are closer to war than at any point in modern history, and the decisions made in the next few months could reshape the entire Western Hemisphere for decades to come. If you want more coverage of this crisis as it develops, hit subscribe. Drop a comment. Do you think war is inevitable, or can this be resolved peacefully? See you in the next one.